How do you want to start it?
I don't know. How should we start?
Welcome to the first edition of the Tales of Ales.
Woo!
I kind of want to put my leg up. Does this make me look sophisticated?
I think it does.
Welcome
Let's
to
take
the Tales of Ales.
Welcome to the Tales of Ales. It's like an educational thing we're doing.
Okay.
What's up, YouTube?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of the Tales of Ales. This is a new series we're going to be doing monthly where we choose a different style of beer per month, and we choose a couple different beers. We give you a background on the style, how it was created, where it's gone, a little bit of history and backstory, and then like we said, we pick two of our preferred choices of said style, and then we review that.
Some interesting examples.
Some interesting examples, yes. Most of the time we're going to try and do year ones, so they're readily available all the time. But we might choose a seasonal here and there.
Yeah.
But the first edition here, we're going to be doing porters. Porters are one of the first, kind of like the OG of craft beers.
Yeah, like the first trendy beer.
The first trendy beer, yes. This one was created a long time ago, 18th century London. Zach can start to give you a little backstory on it here.
They were developed back in 18th century England, like Adam was saying, and what was interesting was they took like all of this kind of cheaper malt, blended all of the different batches together because they had to do multiple batches with the same mash, and they were left with kind of like a slightly unpalatable bitter mess. And what they found out was aging it. This is the first beer that they actually started intentionally aging because they found out that it actually tasted much better if they aged the beer. So if you have anything cellaring right now, which is where you put a beer in the cellar, wait for it to age. If you have anything that you're aging right now, you have this style to thank for it.
Indeed. The great thing about porters, it actually kind of led into another very popular style today, which is the stout. Virtually the same kind of beer. The only difference is that back in like the early 18th century and 19th century, the strong porters were called stout porters. And then eventually the stout porter just kind of went away and it became its own style of stout. Now porters are a little bit lighter, a little bit less of a mouthfeel to them, and then stouts are just like those heavier, thicker, more flavorful versions of the porter.
Yep.
So anyone asks you what the difference between a porter and a stout is? Not much.
Not much.
Not much. They're basically the same beer. They came from the same place.
The most you can really say is maybe a little bit of carbonation.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit richer.
Yeah, most of the time the stouts are going to be that dark, pour like gasoline kind of oily, and then the porters tend to have a little bit more brownish color to them, and sometimes they can be a little bit clear, just depending on the style.
And do you remember where porters actually get their name from?
Yes, they got their name because they were popular amongst the porters back in the 18th century. Those who don't know what a porter is, I had to look it up. These are people who actually carried things for other people. Popular porters are like people who carried luggage and stuff like that, but it was very popular among those people, and that's where they got the name porter.
Yeah, the real working people, the working class.
The working class, yes. This is the beer for the people.
So the beer was popular in England, but how did it become popular everywhere? That really happened with the development of the steam engine, which allowed for people to be able to produce much higher capacity of beer, and they would also, because it was much harder to age things for a long time, there were a lot of richer breweries who ended up buying up smaller breweries, similar to how you see nowadays, who then would use that kind of added capacity to then push their product all around the world.
Yes. So this was actually the first style of beer that made its way around the world and became popular everywhere, not just in England.
In the Baltic states, particularly.
Yes, indeed.
Along with the Baltics, they did ship everywhere around the world, though. That places like Australia, India, Russia, the New World, soon to be known as the United States, America.
And that's a good segue into our styles of porters because there are several different styles now.
Okay.
The original style is like more the English brown porter. This one's usually a very brown color, almost a red tint to it. Not quite as opaque as some like the darker ones would be or the stouts. Usually has like a nice roasted chocolate toffee flavor to it. But like the Fuller's Porter out of London is a good example of this one. It's like basically the original porter and where it became the most popular. Outside of that, we got the Baltic Porter, like we mentioned. This one is lagered and cold fermented with lager yeast, so it's the only one that can be classified as a lager. They made this one stronger so that it could withstand sailing across the Northern Sea to Scandinavia and the Baltic states, hence the name Baltic Porter. Like I said, these are usually a lot more bold, a lot more flavor to them, and usually higher in alcohol content. And then you also got the American porters, English inspired, but they have a distinctly American character. Most breweries like to add their own twist to them, and the two beers that we did choose today are both American porters, and they both have their own unique twist to them, which is going to be fun. But usually these are between brown and black in color, usually between up to like 4 to 8% ABV. It can be anywhere in that range, really. But these can have any kind of wide variety of flavors to them. And a lot of porters nowadays, they age in whiskey barrels to make them give that little barrel-aged finish to them, which is usually really nice.
Now that we've told you a little bit about the history of porters, why don't we try some?
Why don't we try some? So, first up, one of the highest rated porters in the world.
Yeah.
The Founders Porter. The Founders Porter. Those unfamiliar with Founders, drink more craft beer.
They're like right up there, north.
Grand Rapids, Michigan, one of the biggest craft breweries in the nation. They make fantastic beer, and their porter is actually rated 100 on ratebeer.com. And
not many of those.
Not many of those, and this has actually been rated one of the top 5 porters in the world for a long time. So this is a great one to start with. This one comes in at 6.5% ABV, 45 IBUs. As you can see, very dark in color.
Just nice roasty malt. It's
delicious.
just like such a great. It's almost like a kind of coffee roastedness.
Definitely,
it's not a
coffee
coffee smell, but it is like you can tell it was roasted with care.
Yes, definitely got that roasted, almost like a toffee kind of smell coming off.
Yeah, that's what I get from it.
Really, really great nose to this beer.
Just so nice.
Just like the bottle says, dark, rich, and sexy.
Yeah.
So delicious.
It's got that nice, delicious maltiness that has almost like a kind of like chocolatey feel to it, but it's purely just that nice little bitterness that you're getting straight from the malt. It's super smooth.
So this one is actually a robust porter, which is like a step up. It's kind of like the same as a London brown porter, but it's got more flavor to it, and that's the big difference between them. They're not really necessarily higher in alcohol, just more flavor. It's robust.
And like we were saying with porters and stouts being so related, this is like a stout that you could have several of.
It's a sessionable stout. It's basically like,
it's great.
It looks like a stout, but it doesn't drink like one.
Just slightly lighter. It's still just as delicious. Oh man. If you guys haven't tried porters, you gotta really get into some porters.
Yeah, I mean, this is the perfect example of just a really good porter. Like, there's nothing like fancy about it. It's just very true to what it is, and that's what makes it great.
The lacing's even a little bit tighter than I expect from a porter. It's got a nice, like, tight lacing to it.
Yeah. And this is just a great beer. Okay, now that we got a normal porter out of the way, let's move on to
something a little bit more interesting.
A little more interesting. This is the Breckenridge Vanilla Porter out of Breckenridge, Colorado, I think.
I would assume so. If it's not, I'm gonna put where it's from.
Littleton, Colorado. Same thing. But as the label says, this is a vanilla porter, so they do add a little bit more flavor to this one. But as you can see, as we're pouring it, definitely not as thick and dark as the Founders Porter. And that would be the difference in the style, because the Founders is a robust porter, and this one's more of a brown porter.
And browns and porters are also a very related style.
Yes, they are.
There's not as much there on the nose. I mean, it doesn't
Definitely smell the vanilla.
Yeah, there's more of a sweetness, but it like the straight roasted malt that you get from the Founders is just so overpowering. I mean, like, it's a good overpowering, but it's like overpowering.
It's
like,
what you
my
want
God,
out of a
great.
true porter. It's really good. This one's definitely lighter. You can smell how much lighter it is. It's almost clear if
It's
you
like
put it in
dessert.
the light. Yeah, you can smell the vanilla for sure.
It's got like a little bit of a sweetness to it, which is definitely just that vanilla, and then the malt is kind of just there to mellow it out.
It's almost like the root beer of beers.
Yeah. Do you know what it reminds? I mean, color-wise, for sure, it kind of reminds me of Shiner.
Yeah, I can see that. Just a little bit darker, maybe.
And God, I don't remember what Shiner's even classified as. It's this. It's
God, that's delicious. This one doesn't have as much of a bite to it. It is a little bit lower in ABV. Yeah, this one comes in at 5.4% as opposed to 6.5 with the Founders Porter. But really, it's got that really nice vanilla finish to it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like a beer version of like a
Cream soda.
like a
Yeah, like an ice cream float.
yeah yeah.
This beer is just fantastic.
It is. It's tasty.
Yeah, those are just two of the many styles of porters out there. A really great style, especially for this time of year when it's nice and cold out. We got a ton of snow out on the ground. Sit back at home, get a fire going, pour yourself a porter, and really enjoy this original style of craft beer. I mean, it's really good style. Definitely with these two, great options to try if you haven't already tried them. But yeah, anything else you want to say about this?
I mean, tune in to our next video if you want to learn a little bit more about some different styles of beer.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, both of them.
Cheers, Duff.